Welcome to Lead for Good, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. This is a show where the audience will meet and get to know top nonprofit leaders. Together, we will take a deep dive into nonprofit leadership, endeavoring to uncover and unpack the most important characteristics, traits, strategies, and actions of successful nonprofit leaders. Through this journey together, we desire to help you, the nonprofit leader, grow your knowledge and capabilities to lead for good. We want you to achieve your full potential as leaders in the sector. So, welcome to the conversation. We're glad you joined us today. Without further delay, let's join our host, Chris Looney, as he interviews yet another extraordinary leader who is truly leading for good. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Lead for Good, a show for nonprofit leaders that desire to level up their knowledge and skills to reach their full potential as leaders in the nonprofit sector. My name is Chris Looney, and I have the good fortune to be your host for this deep dive into nonprofit leadership. Today on Lead for Good, I'm honored to welcome Dawn Reese, the CEO of the Wooden Floor, an innovative, creative youth development organization that transforms the lives of underserved youth and people through the power of dance, academic support, and family services. And under Dawn's leadership, the Wooden Floor has become a national model for arts-based youth development with remarkable outcomes. 100% of students graduate high school on time and immediately enroll in higher education since 2005. And Dawn is not only a visionary organizational leader, but also a fundraising CEO who has built deep relationships with donors while championing the mission with clarity and passion. And she is also a powerful example of servant leadership, leading with humility, empathy, and a focus on lifting up others. Today, we'll explore what it means to be a fundraising CEO, why servant leadership is essential in the nonprofit sector, and what lessons Dawn has learned along the way. This is going to be an amazing conversation, and I'm really excited to jump in. So, Dawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. I'm really happy to be with you.
Yeah, we're happy to have you and excited to dig in. So let's start with an important topic, which is all about sort of your leadership origin story. Tell us a little bit about how you became the leader you are today.
Thank you. That's a great question. I've actually unpacked that recently. I have an executive coach, and it's been rooted in my early formational time in my 20s. I became unexpectedly my sorority president when I was in college. And that gave me these fundamentals in leadership development training, managing teams, an executive committee. It helped me be a face for the organization in front of other leaders on campus, from student life and development to other Panhellenic sororities representing the organization. So those were very fundamental times, I think, to who I am today. I always ask myself, because again, it was a surprise. The current president actually had declined the nomination, and I had only been in the sorority 6 months. So at the time, so I was very new to the sorority, but I always had told someone, I wish I would have started in the sorority earlier. I would have been president. I don't know why I felt that about myself. So why I say that is, from a leadership, I had early trainings, I had early role models, I had early opportunities to stretch myself, overcome challenges, create a vision. Sometimes you want to have a plan in a sorority, and you don't make goal, or something doesn't happen. People are feeling sad and delusion. Sad is like, how do you inspire people? How do you help them all move forward? How do you help them, develop those key relationships? So I think for me, it's always unusual when people hear that from me that was, but it's pure foundational for me. Then secondly, I was given an opportunity to work with my first boss, who was a servant leader. He was a visionary CEO. He started a CEO consulting practice. So in my 20s, I was very involved in Drucker and Covey, and he was a tech Vistage coach, which is tech now Vistage. So it was always about high performance as CEO leadership, high performance. So couple that with those early 20s timeframe. And then secondly is he also believed giving back to the community in our company. And as we were building our company, he said, well, you have this leadership background. He knew me because his daughter was a good friend of mine. And he said, I'd like you to go on the community. So I joined at the time the Torrance Leadership Council. I served in the Torrance Chamber of Commerce as a volunteer leader, eventually ran their Gourmet Food and Wine Festival. Then I met people and they asked me to be on a board. So I tell a lot of young people today is, when you start your career, get on a board. And there's so many different types of boards to be on, because I think from a governance perspective, all these different things you learn, how to interact with people, how to build your social networks, things like that. So I was on a symphony board and a children's health center board. And that's also foundational to where I am at the Wooden Floor, because my goal was to be a school teacher and a principal coming out of college, and because I wanted to lead a school site, right? But I've always had arts, education, and health and human service in my background and volunteerism that I did. So fast forward to the Wooden Floor,
Yes.
we help inspire young people through the power of dance and access to higher education. And so I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be today, is bringing arts, education, family services to now 475 children year round, for over 10 years that they're here with us. So, it was, when I look back on, I feel like it was almost ordained to be, in some aspects, meant to become a leader. But then it really took time, over these years to develop being a leader, and doing a lot of learning around that.
I love that. I love that. Well, I want to ask you what your favorite sort of professional role has been. And the interesting thing about that question is that you can either take it to be the position that has been your favorite in your career, or the thing that you've done in the nonprofit sort of work of leadership that's been your favorite. So I'll just let it sort of be your question, your answer. What's been your favorite role?
Well, I think when I think of that is, I don't think it's the position for me, it's what I can do with the position. And if I unpack my career, it's really about how do I develop people to reach their highest potential. That's as a staff member, a volunteer, a board member. I look at everybody as people, right? And I want to know, like, oh, you're having a challenge at home or with your business, or something's going on. As you know, a lot of people will confide in me as a CEO, and let us know. And then I can then work the process to maybe get them networked into a new role, have their resume looked at. Someone internally that's interested in moving up into leadership, give them those opportunities to be a leader internally, help them get into a leadership development program we have here, like Fulcrum, or also Fieldstone Foundation here in Orange County. Cal State Fullerton has some programs too that we send people to, because I learned a long time ago through Fieldstone is, yes, we're developing leaders for our own organizations, but we also will be populating great leaders into the community. And that's a combo, like we talked about, servant leadership, but really also just my own mission is to inspire young people. And that kind of is my current students I have at the Wooden Floor. But recently, last night, I was at an event for one of my friends' organizations who runs a youth development program, not related at all, but I was just there to support her goals, right, for her organization. And someone said, oh, both of you, like, Dawn, why are you here? They knew me. Why are you here? And I'm like, because I'm supporting Julie. And we're all here to support children. Robert Santana and I talk about that, and others, like, we're all in this to help others.
That's wonderful. And that's going to touch on our servant leadership conversation we're going to have in a little bit, but that's so perfectly well said. Developing people to reach their full potential is such an extraordinary talent of a good leader. So thank you for sort of pulling that out for us. Speaking of sort of developing people, I'd love to know who some of your strongest mentors have been throughout your career and why. What did they do for you?
Well, I think I go back to my first boss. I talk about him a lot, in writings and things like that. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, I think, starting to your full potential. I was a psychology major. There was no reason you would have seen me as a management consultant in the high tech sector, where I eventually took my career over 10 years
Right.
working in marketing, business development, finance, uh, and HR, human resources consulting that I was doing to the tech sector, right? So I was going to, like I said, be a teacher and a principal. But I was a learner. I was a lifelong learner. He saw something in me that if I give her something, she's gonna, and with some guidance, right? She's gonna take it. I kind of meant I lead like that here at the wooden floor. Like I always say, I'm in here at the beginning and I'm here at the end, unless you need something in the middle. But I will stop. I'll be there to answer questions if you get stuck or something. And that's why people always say, how do I do so much? And it's also because I delegate well. I trust my team. I help build them into those key skills and that we need as an organization, and I need in order to feel confident that I'm able to delegate to them, right?
Right.
And I think it's because he modeled that. I was with him for 10 years at his organization. And the only reason I left is he had Parkinson's and he brought in some new partners. And I was like, okay, I think this is a good time for me to go
Right.
to that next stage in my career. But he also, at the time, had me start a nonprofit trade association. And he named me the founding executive director. And again, I had to just figure out what it means to start a nonprofit, run a nonprofit. And I think it's also, again, formative to where I am today with, at the wooden floor and everything I do in this sector. But the biggest part for me was I had other mentors in my life, but I also had a lot of book mentors, people, Warren Bennis, Ken Blanchard, the 1 minute man, I point. So the 1 minute manager is
Right
right here.
on your
My
bookshelf. Yeah.
boss gave it to me years ago, and I just met Ken about 2 years ago.
Oh,
He
neat.
signed my book for me, and on top of the book is a photo of Randall and I from like the 90s when I worked for him.
So good.
And I'm just so fortunate to have great role models that I look up to, that I learn from. And then also I believe in reverse mentoring too. I learn from younger people that are up and coming in their career, that are I mentor um, formally, I say formally through Cal State Long Beach. I'm in the business school. I usually mentor at least one student a year who's about to graduate.
Awesome.
And I take years off depending on what's going on with the organization, but it's great because just from them, I learned things that I didn't even know like about like 2 years ago, 3 years ago was like social media, logistics, different technologies, what's happening in MIS. And I've always still kept my tech background going. So I'm always still, reading up on what's happening in the tech community, AI, everything like that, and how it will impact not only our organization, but our students here at the Wooden Floor. But for me, I learned so much when I talk to younger people, not from like that coaching and mentoring, but what I learned from them that helps me then become a better leader and person because everyone adds value.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that because you talk to someone about the mentors in their life, and they often sort of look up to the people that went before them, that were older, maybe had the position they wanted to be in, or whatever that might be. But I do believe it's true that you learn an equal amount from those that might be your peers, that might be some of the people you manage or volunteer with, or whatever it might be. So, extremely helpful to keep an open mind about learning from everyone and being that lifelong learner.
Right. And I think, there's different needs today, different teams today. People can learn from each other differently. And, hearing what they're working on gives me ideas around partnerships and other kinds of things. And I'm like, okay, well,
Great.
like I don't look like like, oh, you're a younger new careerist. Like I only have to talk to my peers, sisters in good, you know.
Right. Right.
It's like for me, it's really like that we're all in this together.
That's right. That's right. Wonderful. Now, all of that leadership that you've accumulated over the years has probably developed in you a certain philosophy around leadership. Maybe not something so formal or written out, but what would be some ingredients for you of leadership that are most important to you?
So, again, through my executive coach, Vance Caesar, he's been in my life since 2013. I was introduced to him by Tim Strzok at 1OC.
Sure.
And now I'm in his quarterly groups that meet quarterly. So I've had him in my life now since 2013, I think. Yeah. So 12 years.
Amazing.
And Vance is always challenging us about our leadership footprint, what we're trying to do. And I think it's been instrumental for me to really like, what is my leader? What's my definition of who I am and why? I remember saying to him years ago, I said, I lead with empathy. And he goes, yeah, Dawn. He goes, I lead with empathy too. And I said, okay. But I had to unpack what that meant for me. And at the end of the day, it's servant leadership, right? Because we're charged to make some difficult decisions at difficult times, and we have a huge amount of information that we have to process, and we have a lot of constituents, especially in the nonprofit sector, that we have to make sure are both internal and external stakeholders that we want to make sure that we serve. And at the same time, people and most nonprofits, and I would say companies, people are your superpower, right? How are they? They really are closest to who you're serving, closest to your client, representing you in the community, supporting your strategies and what you have to do.
Right.
And if you don't take an empathy, people first lens, which company, some CEOs don't, they still are successful in their own right. Their boards have hired them for their skill sets and what they do. But I have seen, and I know people that are servant leaders that believe there's people and profit, right? And in the in the nonprofit sector, it's impact, right? We can have profit in the nonprofit sector, but it's really for us, it's about what's that impact to a greater good, right? So for me, it's just really understanding that empathy is also part of design thinking. So if you're an innovative leader, it's part of the design thinking process. Design thinking, IDEO, which is in Stanford, really unpacks what that is. And it all starts with empathy by asking, about having an understanding about the problem or solution you're trying to create, or solution for the problem you want to help. And so, but it all starts with, being not just assuming, making assumptions about things. It's actually unpacking, is it needed? Is it necessary? What do the people in the community want that technology or solution to provide to them to help them? And then it goes into a whole process of, planning, operationalizing, implementing, and then evaluating. And so we have internally at the Wooden Floor have built that process into it because we lead with empathy in all that we do. And that really benefits us with the children, the families we serve, our supporters, our board members. So when we do any strategic planning process, we have a 10-year vision, 2021 to 2031 we're in currently. We have one from 2010 to 2020. And in it, we look at strategic plans as chapters in a book. And each time we feel like we need to rethink what our vision, our planning process is, we'll go to our community. We ask them like, hey, we pre-pandemic, or not pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, post-pandemic, things have changed a lot. So how are we making sure that we're responding to their needs? The supporter base is changing. The community is changing. If we just, we've been around today 42 years, since 1983,
Right.
where we wouldn't be here if we weren't responsive. And I believe that all starts with empathy, which is also, there's an article by Harvard Business Review. It's called What Makes a Leader? And there are 5 domains of emotional intelligence, and empathy is one of them. To be a top, 5-level leader, you want to have that as part of your toolkit.
Well, I want to go find out about the other four now too. So I'm going to chase down that article right after we our interview because I don't want to be left behind, and I want all five of those to be a part of my leadership and yours and everyone else's as well. So thank you for that. And with each of our leadership conversations, we focus on some key elements of nonprofit leadership. And for this conversation, Dawn, I know we want to explore what it means to be a fundraising CEO and talk about the importance of servant leadership. So let's start with the concept of being a fundraising CEO. And I ask you this question. So many nonprofit leaders wrestle with whether the CEO should be the primary fundraiser. How do you view your role as a fundraising CEO?
So I believe my role is to develop a culture of philanthropy. And that is done through that same lens of empathy and understanding, especially for the team that we have. And then in reciprocity also to the board members that we have at the organization who are direct influencers in the community, but then also we have other volunteers and other opportunities for people to support us through our supporter base and foundation partners. But if I'm not having that understanding of the needs that our development team has, then how can I just set random goals? How can I understand the stresses that they're in as we're getting near to year end if I myself haven't walked in their shoes?
Right.
And so again, that is still within that lens of servant leadership. Now, the responsibilities are different. I consider myself part of the development team working with my chief development officer, Tiana, who then has our team. And then I work also within the team and our grant partners and things like that. But for me, it's more about the types of nonprofits we have sometimes too. So some nonprofits are more government funded and some are more individual, private foundation funded, right? So if you're more government funded and you have more earned revenue or grant dollars that are coming in, you have less people that you have to also, interact with from a relationship building side.
Right.
I believe if you're private funded, your constituents may look different when you're government funded, but when you're private funded, you have the goal is right to meet new people, who could either advocate for your mission, support your mission, obviously, social influencers who repost, post, and like, different social media that I do. I say, I'm accepting, I'm an influencer. Payal, who's our director of marketing, we have a marketing team also, though. So when I write something, she can repost to our wooden floor channels. We can promote it inside of our newsletters, our digital and our hard copy newsletters. And then it's that direct connection with our supporters. I feel it's an honor to be able to represent our mission and be as excited as I am about all that I'm doing. And, that I'm representing the organization. So I am technically, as I say, the face, but I have many faces. Tiana's a face, Payal's a face,
Right.
Vanessa, Kimberly, all my leadership team is. Jen Bonfil, who's our artistic director. We're all in the community in our own individual spheres. But I am the person that most people think to as, oh, Dawn is a CEO of the wooden floor. And because of that, it helps me to be excited about those meetings, to build those relationships. And I think sometimes when you think fundraising CEO, people worry that, oh, I'll be asking all the time. Well, that's part of just fundraising. That is a component, but it's also prospecting, meeting new people. It's also having tours and meetings and proposal development and design. It's also sharing marketing content, videos, people to hear your own perspectives on thought leadership, writing articles for the Orange County Business Journal like I do. asking is a part. Yes, I ask. I have asked. But sometimes I realize I don't always have to ask. It's more the excitement of the mission leads people to how they want to best support
Sharing
the mission.
opportunities.
I think people get fearful, right? They get fearful that, oh, how will I do this? Well, I also trained. I went to Gerald Panis. He's actually passed away, but he led many. I went to almost three from a fundraising mentor, Frank Hall, who is also passed, sadly, was my mentor. He actually was one of our first development consultants at the Wooden Floor when we were known as St. Joseph Ballet,
That's
because
right.
he worked for St. Joseph Hospital. And he loved our mission and supported us. And I believe I tell people all the time that I think that's why we've been set up with such a strong annual fund. We've always had traditional individual giving, grants, events. And then since I've been here, it's really been building on the endowment as that long-term plan for the organization.
Well, you said it really well a minute ago about misconceptions that certain leaders might have about the involvement of the CEO in the fundraising process is not necessarily always the ask. It's a lot of things, a ton of things. But what advice would you give CEOs who are hesitant about fundraising or see it really outside of their skill set?
So, when I started at the Wooden Floor, I wasn't CEO. I was our chief financial officer and general manager.
Okay.
But everybody who was non-artistic reported into me. And so I was like, well, how can I manage marketing and development if I'm not doing it myself? So
Well,
I actually was actually encouraged by Gary Good, who's with Association Fundraising Professionals. He was on the national board at the time, and I had met him when I was at Opera Pacific, the prior organization I was at. And we were out to lunch, and I was just talking like that kind of thing, like, where do I learn to do fundraising? And he's like, well, you should join AFP, Association of Fundraising Professionals. I started in 2011. I also did it because I knew there was a plan for me to become, at the time, a co-CEO with Melanie in 2012. So I knew that that was kind of the game plan for me. So I spent almost a year just understanding fundraising, going to conferences, going to AFP Icon, and then 2012, I became CEO. Keegan Bell, who was on our team then, was our director of development. Eventually, he became a chief development officer. But we were at the fundraising conference, and encouraged me again, like I said, reverse mentoring. He said, Dawn, I think you could be a certified fundraising executive, which is a high designation in our fundraising profession. And of course, I said, are you kidding me? Like,
I'm a CEO.
this is like 2015. I'd only really technically been in true fund. I mean, like I said, I started that nonprofit, so I was technically not doing fundraising, but not in that traditional annual fund type of work. And so he encouraged me to get my CFRE, which I did in 2015. And, I do it, I have it in my designation and my signature line and all that. And I want people to know, especially our supporter base to know, and our board members to know, that I do understand the top line fundraising philosophies, approaches, and ethics related to fundraising. And so because of that, it gave me this, not automatic, but part of my toolkit of authenticity and also expertise, that I provide to people.
Well, for
And so
me,
for me, it's just about learning, really. And learning's easy. There's all kinds of things today on the internet, going to meetings, and that's really conferences and other things. But you have to, at the end of the day, want to.
yeah. No,
So
and it's a mark of distinction for sure. And for me, it was just amazing to find someone who was the CEO who proactively pursued the CFRE as opposed to a director of development, chief development officer who had the CFRE and got promoted up to the CEO role, which is not
right.
uncommon. So you are distinct and rare and wonderful. So are these other people, but you have that CFRE in a different way. Well, what about the balancing act then of being someone that's very involved in fundraising, but then also needing to be the operational leader day in and day out as well. How do you deal with both?
So, unusual to us and the organization we have is we don't look at some fundraising uh, departments have it where, everybody has a portfolio of people they work with, and some people don't talk to each other,
Right.
because it's their group of people. And we didn't like that idea concept of silos. We believe it's one goal, we all work towards it. Within that, though, is we have different tiers in the organization. We have high tier, mid tier, and low tier. And for our organization, it's like $25 to say, it's $1,000 low tier. And then low tier, the next mid tier is usually between 1,000 to 9,000. And then there's high tier, which is 10,000 and above.
Yep.
And so I spend an inordinate amount of time in high tier, obviously, but it's also developing relationships with everyone, So I sign every letter here. It's important for me to wet sign, unless there's some reason, pandemic, we had to electronically sign things. Because I can write notes. I can write little things on there. And I do that for everybody from $5. I just had a $5 one I just signed today, all the way to 100,000 plus, right? And so,
And you know your
and
donors.
it's a real, and people notice that I sign. Now, I don't sign if I'm maybe on vacation or something, because we want the supporter to get immediate acknowledgement.
Right.
But I get so much response because I get people that say, "Oh, thanks so much for your note." And for me, that's another way to build a relationship, because I never know if someone's giving maybe in the lower amount today. Maybe think circumstances change, or they think about us maybe and their estate plans down the road, and maybe they add us to their will or trust, And for me, it's more that I want people to know that I care about them, and that it's really important for me to acknowledge that. Could we run the whole organization on the $5? It would be very difficult, right? But some organizations have thousands of people, right? At that level. For us, our supporter base is manageable, because we don't have that silo. I may talk to a volunteer or a board member or one of our community partners, but I always make sure we're all integrated, and vice versa. So
Okay.
if Tiana or Renette, who's our development manager, is talking with supporters, and they know that where they are in our daily connections, we always make sure that we're coordinated, because we want them to feel like they're well taken care of.
Yeah. But you don't feel like you're spending too much time on fundraising, or that operationally things are being sacrificed. Perhaps you have great staff and you're delegating, but you don't feel like you're sacrificing anything by being a fundraising CEO.
I definitely don't think I sacrifice. I get more out of it. I get more energy. I get more understanding, more connection to mission. We have our year-end appeal. I'm very involved in all the marketing as well. We pick the students, we pick the colors, all this, I'm involved in all those details, right? But I bump into her in the hallway. Yesterday, I was giving a tour to somebody, and I'm like, "Cindy, oh my gosh, did you know the appeal's already here? I cannot wait to show it to you." She goes, "I just want to tell you how much I felt so proud to be part of this." And I
Nice.
could have that connection with her because I know exactly what's going on.
Great.
Now, with that said, I also manage my calendar really well. I just did a workshop on time management, purpose-driven time management,
Ooh, I
is
like that.
that I actually block time on my calendar. There's certain cycles in the year where
Mm,
I'm more focused, fall and year end, or the beginning of the year around events and things like that, where I have to block time on my calendar for follow-ups or other kinds of things. So I have a color code system on my calendar. So I also know when I don't have a lot of fundraising conversations or lunches or meetings, I got to get more of that color
yeah,
right onto my calendar.
great.
And so it tells me like, oh, I'm spending way too much in this area. And also I just want to go back. I have an awesome team. My team has high tenure. They've been here. They know exactly what they're doing. They have a lot of expertise. And so that enables me because I believe also part of fundraising is also being in the community like I am. So when I'm out, and I always say out and about, so it makes it sound like, oh, it's just walking around. No, it's strategic. I'm in strategic places that matter. I don't go to everything people think I do because I do post a lot on LinkedIn. But for me, it's strategic. Everything I do is for a reason. And every time you would see me somewhere, you'll know I'm there for a purpose. And so, and when I'm not, I'm here. I'm working on our strategies, our strategic vision, our strategic plan, our operational, changes. I have a great COO and Vanessa Rodriguez and, Tiana, CDO, but everybody on the team with, Kimberly Hernandez, our director of student development, our controller, who's amazing, Eliana Coronado, and then Jen Bonfil is, like I mentioned earlier, our artistic director. She's been with the organization almost 20 years, and so Kyle, is celebrating her 17th year at the wooden floor, and she's our director of communications and marketing. So,
You
but
give
it's
us,
part of what we do. It's part of our mission and our strategies for our theory of change is also developing long-term relationships with our students. And we've taken that same philosophy into our supporters as well
I love
and
it.
our staff.
Love it. Well, hearing all of these wonderful shout outs to your staff who you care deeply about and who do such a great job um, leads us very nicely into the second part of our conversation around servant leadership. You are known to embrace it, you're known to be a servant leader. But I'd be interested in sort of a definition from you about what it means to be a servant leader.
Well, I think it goes back to as that your goal is to, as a servant leader, is to care about the care and concern of others. That's my definition of it.
Good.
I believe in the guiding principle that we have in the organization that I brought to it years ago, is that do unto others as you have done unto you. So that always frames the way that I make decisions. I um, work on ideas. I work on thoughts. I look at the scheduling we have going on. I look at, is this the right time for that initiative? Yes, it's a goal, but really, can we push it to the next quarter, right? When we do something like that? And so it's also taking care and concern of, where the health and welfare is of the organization, what's going on in the community, what kind of stresses because of that can come back into the community. And then our staff is also dealing with those things. So for me, it starts with care and concern. I was at the Purpose Summit this year in Charlotte, and Gary Ridge from WD-40 talked about this, is that if you have happy employees and a happy environment, right, they're hopefully ideally going to go home and have a happy family and happy friends in their life, right? This could be the ripple effect. And then we're going to have a happy community, right? Because we're going to have great volunteers, baseball coaches, soccer coaches, people make volunteering in our community. And so at the end of the day, and then our global citizens, right, in our world, like making a difference, making an impact in the lives of others, just caring about people and their care and concern. And so for me, when I heard that, I'm like, that's like the definition we say here at the wooden floor too. It's a ripple effect, right? A positive change. But if you really focus that with your employees, it's led us in the pandemic, post-pandemic, to receive best places to work the last 3 years, 22, 23, 24, and 25.
Mm.
And that's not just, oh, we give a survey to our staff and then they respond.
Right.
No, they're responding. And when we didn't receive it for a couple of years, we were asking ourselves, we were still high on scores, but in comparative to the cohort, we didn't get it. So we were saying, okay, what can we continue to work on and change and develop? And so we have a culture task force here at the wooden floor too, that really focuses on these key deliverables, I feel, with servant leadership, and recognizing staff, celebrating successes, working on performance, review and evaluation, employee wellness, things like that, if we all are part of it, it's only going to make everything stronger.
I love that. Yeah, some people equate servant leadership with soft leadership.
Right.
And how do you demonstrate that it's both sort of compassionate, I think it's soft, but powerful as well? Like
Right.
it is both, right?
It is 100%. And like I said, there's all kinds of CEOs and all types of organizations that they have different models and they still are successful, even though maybe people aren't their highest priority. But when people are highest priority kind of goes to the very beginning and they can reach their fullest potential, they're going to come back into work every day and be completely engaged. At the Purpose Summit, they talked about the depletion of people that are engaged in the workplace. I think it's like only 60% or something of people go to, it was a Gallup poll, that go into the workplace and are engaged at work.
Right.
Well, think about the mission of the wooden floor. If we had low engagement scores, it affects who we serve and affects their outcomes and affects their goals and objectives. It doesn't help us break the cycle of poverty. It doesn't help them go to college. It doesn't help them succeed in life. And that really, it's at the end of the day, the ultimate part of the success is, and this can be applied to a for-profit company too that has clients and constituents. And WD-40 with Gary is a classic example of that. Philosophy is, he came in, instituted this servant leadership philosophy. It has now become a global brand, billions of dollars in revenue. People are empowered to do a great job at work. Like I always say, if everything is great, if things go, so that means you have little divots that happen, you know, fix them, move on,
Right.
but if you have everybody all kind of rowing in that same direction, you're gonna break the friction point of what happens in traditional dysfunctional organizations. A lot of gossiping, a lot of talking, a lot of non-support for initiatives, focusing on the distraction. We want high retention. We focus on retention because we make that 10-year commitment to children. And as I said, it does benefit the organization administratively as well. But for us, it's really about, like I always say to the team, I want you here as long as possible. I hope you're feeling fulfilled while you're doing it. But there might be a day you leave. And that we talk about that openly, but we want you while you're here to do your best for children.
Yeah.
Like bring your best self to work every day.
Yeah. I
And
love
then we as an organizationally have to model that, right? We have to, the way we, treat people. Like I said, we spend a lot of time in the summer with our summer activities for our team. They're not very expensive, but like we walk across the street and we get 31 flavors. It's been a tradition. We never do it all year except for summer. It's just our it's only one time, but it's just the fun traditions and activities we have in this cycle and the things that our staff can do together so they can, I always say, especially in the nonprofit sector, take a little steam off the teapot.
it.
Right.
Right.
Like it can be stressful sometimes, but if we generally are a happy culture, right? And people feel taken care of, they can also bring their challenges to us too. We have I can't even talk about all the challenges we have with staff, especially during the pandemic. We've had
Right.
losses, we've had other challenges our staff have faced. And we've approached it with openness, kindness, and wanting to make sure that, are they taken care of?
I love that. Love it. Well, what piece of advice would you give to an emerging nonprofit leader about leading with both courage and humility? What would that be?
So also I was going to add too on the last part, when
Yeah.
it talks about profit, we didn't talk about like performance and profit.
Okay.
Is having high retention, you don't have as much time loss, you have
Oh,
higher
interesting. Yeah.
performance. The organization, as an example, we were 2.1 million, now we're 4.1 million this year in our budget size. Our annual fund has grown dramatically during that time. Our students served, we've gone from 375 to 475 children. We've opened up new initiatives across the nation, as you talked about, with our licensed partnership and locally through our Dance Uplifts. And it's also because we're in it to win it for the kids too. And so so that's our philosophy internally. So it expands in our program, expands in our strategy, it expands in our performance. And so it's also tied to impact for us.
Yeah, and that's the powerful side.
Yeah. So to your question on advice is, I think a couple of things. One, as you mentioned earlier, mentorship. I think find a mentor. I believe there's a difference in a coach and a mentor. I believe a mentor is someone who's gone before you and can hopefully help you not have those same potholes and things like that in life and give you.
Navigate.
And then you have or a coach when you get farther along in your career, have a coach that can really dig in and ask you about those things like what's your leadership footprint? What kind of impact do you want to have? How do you want to be known in life? Where are your blind spots that you have? What can you work on? Those kinds of things. I believe in peer advisory. I believe that peer groups, both formally and informally, I was talking about earlier Fieldstone Foundation and 1OC has some peer advisory too. I'm on the board at 1OC. But then also our Sisters in Good group, where we can share challenges that are happening in our own lives and our leadership and things that we need to share with resources and things like that. So I really encourage people. And then tying back to what I said earlier too is I'm actually mentoring a young arts leader right now. She's on her way up. And I said to her, I think one of the areas she needs to round out in order to be a CEO down the road is to be on a board like I was in my 20s. It doesn't have to be the wooden floor. It could be, an emerging nonprofit or something where you can get in hands-on volunteering. But I always tell people in the for-profit sector, that's probably the number one thing they should focus on is getting on a nonprofit board. You can flex muscles that you may not be able to flex in your everyday role. You learn different things, you learn information, you learn about what's happening outside of your company or your organization. And then it also helps you. As you know, I'm on several boards and I learn a lot to bring back to the wooden floor because of that too,
Right.
And so for me, I tell people all the time that that's important. And then just lastly, I think just being a lifelong learner, there's so many opportunities. I had a staff member with years ago, and she came into me and she said, would you be my mentor? And I said, oh, sure, I'd love to. And I actually still am.
I'm honored.
And even though she's not at the wooden floor anymore. And I said, well, the first things you need to work on is just learning, right? You have to push yourself. So she started working on podcasts and listening to things at her lunch hour and all kinds of reading. And she's actually very successful. She ended up becoming an ED of a foundation, So, it's, but, I think and then I think the lastly is just you have to challenge yourself to feel uncomfortable.
So
Put yourself in uncomfortable places, walk into that's how I was in 2012. I didn't know a lot of people in my new role. And I would go to some events in Orange County and I felt like, oh my gosh, nobody knows me. I don't know. Now I know a lot of people. So when I go somewhere, I usually will know people, but it was so uncomfortable, but because of that, I met some really great people that led to helping me from for-profit company, helped me strategize on my license partnership idea. I met people from Edwards Life Sciences during the pandemic that I could reach out to talk about, how do we create a virtual strategy? And it was all because I was meeting people outside of the organization when I felt uncomfortable.
great. I love that concept of pressing into discomfort and doing things that make you uncomfortable because you don't have that muscle yet and you need it. It's not in everything, but it's in a lot of things. It's uncomfortable because you don't have the muscle, because you haven't done it before and it's new, but you do it and you become more comfortable, you become stronger, and it becomes second nature, which is true growth.
Right.
So thank you for pointing that out. It's such a good concept to think about further. As we kind of move toward our close, I wanted to ask three more questions that are personal and bring out a little bit of meaning in your leadership journey. What's been your proudest moment at the wooden floor so far?
There's so many.
Yeah, it's a tough one. But as a leader, it's interesting because you can point to a lot of successes or something that you've seen. Whatever.
Well, I always tell people that, because I came from the for-profit sector, I could have stayed in the for-profit sector, right? I could be working at a large company and have stock options and all those kinds of things, right? But I always say our students are our stock options. They are, they rise to their success, right?
There you
So for
go.
me personally, at the end of the day, getting a call from an alumna or alumnus, I should say, who is on their either in college or on their next career journey, figuring out what their next steps are, coming in for feedback and asking like, hey, can you give me these ideas on this? Do you know anybody in these industries? Opening up my Rolodex to help them, say Rolodex, Outlook,
Yeah, it's
to
okay.
help them fig
Most of the
to
people
fig
that are listening to this podcast.
to figure that out. And I have to say, that is the ultimate success for me, is that, and not all students do that, right? We were a part of their life and now they go on, but a lot of them do. They come back because we have a scholarship program, so we see them for sure during their 4 years, but then they come back to annual concert and they'll come in just as new parents. They'll bring their kids now, right? We've been around 42 years, so we have alumni who maybe I didn't know in the past. They were here before me, but they have such a deep rooted appreciation for our mission and what we've done in their life. For me, it's really those personal stories of our students. For me, I have two students recently that are now graduated college. Both got married in the last year. Both also got pregnant and have had babies also in the last year. And getting their photos and saying, like, oh my gosh, going to their wedding. I went to both their weddings. Both of them sent me baby photos as soon as the kids were born. That for me, there is nothing better. Like, they are my stock options. Like, that is the heavy that's the lift of making a difference in a child's life, right? That
So
their life is better. That stock, as your, penny stock you bought years ago is now at
I live
$100.
so high. Yeah.
It's that same concept of put that money in, invest in it. We're investing in the children, and now they go to their full potential. They go to their highest calling.
Yeah. Well, and I think you said something in there or implied something in there that, you know, the majority of these graduates who have been in your program for 10 years, they're not going to go on to be the president of the United States or a senator or a CEO or a billionaire, but that's not the point, right?
Well, actually, I think they could.
They could. There's no doubt about it. And as a percentage, they'll probably have as much opportunity now because of your program and other opportunities that any other person would have to be
Right,
famous or rich or
right,
successful, by to the world standards. But most importantly, they have been given an opportunity. They have been modeled what successful sort of contributing life looks like to society, and they are contributing to the improvement of society. You're breaking the sort of cycle of poverty, or
yeah,
these generational cycles, and it's not one life at a time for you. It's nearly 500 lives at a time, and
yes.
it's just so powerful, and more powerful than producing one billionaire. So
Right.
it's
And I think it's the life skill development, is many of them are first in their family to go to college. Many don't have those formative foundational and like, what does that take to get there? What does that look like? Or, today, career technical education, we see that growing too down the road. But for us, it's really like, how do we develop those life skills for them to be um, positive contributors to society, right?
Yep.
And making a difference. We have a lot of students today that are STEAM majors, and they're actually graduating. So they're becoming biologists, biotech, computer engineering, gaming design. And 60% of the last 5 years have been predominantly women in STEAM. We do have boys here at the Wooden Floor, but for us, those are inventors, creators, entrepreneurs coming down the pike. Like you said, future leaders in our community. And, for the end of the day, that's really what it's all about for me. How I lead at the Wooden Floor is one part of it, but the derivative of that leadership is the difference I can make in the world.
Yeah, well, it's easy to see how you can personally stay grounded and inspired as a leader, given the work that you're doing and the lives that you're influencing. So one final question. What's next for you and what's next for the wooden floor?
So for me, it's really I'm my 17th year at the Wooden Floor. I love it. I tell people all the time I feel like I'm just starting. So it tells me I'm in the right
Amazing.
place I need to
That's
be
awesome.
at 17 years
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Not to say the pandemic and other Great Recession when I started, and the pandemic didn't, wasn't Herculean efforts, right, during that time. But, for me, I think now it's more work around service. So, I have my board service I'm on in the community. It's service through mentorship, working with, like I said, uh, leaders who are interested in taking their career board. I actually have for-profit and nonprofit people that
Yeah.
I actually coach and mentor.
Perfect.
And then also, I am also starting a book. I know you've written a couple of books, but I'm starting to
Mhm.
write a book I have on leadership of how the hardest part of being a servant leader is not letting, but when people leave you and you've built them for their next success. It's not bigger and better. I don't believe in that concept. It's just a different, more opportunity, more, stretching
Wonderful.
they need to do. So I have 3 chapters written of my
Great.
probably 15 chapter book.
Amazing.
Learning it doesn't have to be War and Peace. And
Let's
and
hope it's not.
yeah, focusing on family and everything else I've got. My son just got married this year, so he
Amazing.
lives in Las Vegas, so that's gonna have me out there a lot. And then I think for the wooden floor, we've been really looking at through our strategic vision and our planning process, even taking in the pandemic, is one, can we serve more children and have more impact? And we're feeling right now that we're not sure about adding a third location unless something was fully funded, because that's part of our forward funding philosophy we have here. That could be a whole show in itself,
I
Chris.
know. That's great.
Our
I'm gonna
forward
write that down.
funding
Yeah.
process, we don't want to take any long-term debt on. So if something came in that we were surprised, we would be able to fully fund it and also fund the 10 years of operating. That's what we did for our second location. We would look at that. But it's really like, how do we work in partnership? That's what we've been focused on in this tenure journey. And that's really, especially during the pandemic, other collaborations, things like that. And our new Dance Uplift program is a new after school program we have going into school districts after school.
Wonderful.
And someone actually requested also to think about in school, but right now, after school, to bring the values of the wooden floor into the community, help bring our somatic based modern dance approach that really is about social, emotional, and academic wellness into the lives of the children. And we've already seen in pre and post tests, and we've expanded from 9 school sites in our pilot in the Garden Grove School District. And we were just approved last week to be in 24 school sites in 25, 26. Once we now know this is completely working, now we're going to go into other school districts in Orange County who have Title I schools. And then lastly, it's our licensed partner model. Coming out of the pandemic, a lot of people were just focused on themselves like ourselves just to make sure we were here for our own students. Now we feel like we're at this place to really look at other communities across the US, look for people that want to, you look at our modern dance, somatics based approach and youth development, creative youth development strategies, and bring it into their community across the nation. So we're ready now to start that process again of actually going and finding those organizations versus kind of reacting to when people came to us. So for us, so there's lots of growth opportunities and lots of opportunity to serve more, and but also be prudent. There's, as all nonprofits have limited resources, and we have a loving community of supporters that care about what we do here at the Wooden Floor. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure we do everything prudently, and that's really a hallmark of the organization.
Yeah, and a hallmark of your leadership as well. And I just wanted to thank you, Dawn, for sharing all of this wisdom and expertise with our audience. There's so much great leadership, education to unpack in this conversation, and I have no doubt that it's going to be a positive influence for so many of the leaders that plug in and enjoy today's conversation. But unfortunately, we've come to the end of this episode, and just wanted to thank you again, Dawn, for being such a strong leader and sharing your leadership tips and expertise with us. If you've enjoyed this content, we'd invite you to subscribe and follow us, and also look at our other two podcasts, which are Mastering Fundraising and The Nonprofit Edge. In each of these podcasts that we produce, we focus on speaking with extraordinary leaders like Dawn, who have great leadership journeys to share, and also expertise in particular areas that more people in the leadership space need to know about. So again, until next time, thanks so much all for joining, and we will see you back very soon.
Thank you for joining us for this most recent episode of Lead for Good. Our passion is helping nonprofit leaders reach their full potential as leaders, and we sincerely hope this episode has been edifying for you. Please subscribe to this podcast to not miss any of our Lead for Good conversations. We welcome your feedback, suggestions, and comments via email at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Lead for Good is a production of Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership. Please visit us on the web at www.fulcrumleader.com. Until next time, we wish you all the best and encourage you to always lead for good.